Congressman Walter Jones of North Carolina will be joining us. He's the man who introduced the legislation to unseal the 28 secret pages of the 9/11 Commission report that shows, with the intelligence documents, that Saudi Arabia was clearly behind the September 11th attacks, and our government ordered a stand down. He'll be joining us coming up at the start of the third hour. We're going to have open phones and cover news in the meantime. And, of course, this Saudi Arabia 9/11 Commission report integrates in to the fact that Joe Biden, the vice president, has now groveled before the Qatari president for daring to speak half-truths about ISIS. See, they're trying to spin this right now that this administration clearly funded al-Qaeda in Iraq, now known as ISIS or ISIL to confuse us. And this is a major scandal in the government itself because people in the government are completely freaked out. It's a kind of a come-to-Jesus moment where they realize, wow, our government really is running and funding al-Qaeda. It's all true. And the military's waking up. It's just amazing. And so they're busy trying to spin all of this right now. And so Joe Biden has come out and said in a speech that, yes, Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Turkey and others have been funding ISIS. Well, yeah, with the U.S. and NATO giving them the weapons and then giving them directly to al-Qaeda. And so now Biden's had to back off and apologize and grovel. Those stories are up on Infowars.com. What's going to happen when their wind-up toys, their Frankenstein monsters, attack Europe, attack the United States? The FBI's in the news today, in The Hill and other publications saying an attack is imminent. FBI director warns of Khorasan attack. The U.S. is preparing for an imminent terrorist attack. That's the headline. Same thing in the UK, same thing in Germany, same thing in France. What happens when they attack and everyone who's got half a brain knows our government helped reconstitute them, give them the weapons, and open the door for them? You're now going to be held responsible. And that's why they're panicking doing damage control, because they don't completely control these groups. It's like throwing a baby into a starving, pit of pit bulls. They just wind them up or dumping rattlesnakes in somebody's bed or black widows. Now al-Qaeda, under new names to confuse the public, is turned loose, running wild all over the world, from Far East, right through Africa, right into Europe, right into the United States. And when they attack, the government isn't just going to be able to take more liberties and freedoms and grandstand as saviors. Everyone's going to say, wait a minute. You created this new group. You helped protect them out of al-Qaeda. What's going on here? The chickens are coming home to roost. We have this CIA retired field commander on, Mr. Steele, who back in September predicted an Ebola false flag in America using a simulant that isn't really Ebola. He's joining us tomorrow. We're going to get that clip today. We talked about it yesterday. And we're going to play that clip. We're going to get an article out at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com pointing that out, because he came highly recommended by Colonel Schaefer and others who represent a very good block of people at the highest levels of the Pentagon. I'll just leave it at that. People always talk about, oh, we want to see a military coup. We want to see all this. It's not going to be a military coup. It's the good guys in the military that are leaking the info and saying no. Of course, Schaefer's a whistleblower. He said, you want to know what's really going on? Get Steele on. Steele comes on and starts just laying it out. And, of course, he basically already knows what's really going on. He just can't come out with all of it. So it's big. We're going to talk about it coming up today. Stay with us. It was the 18th of September last month, about 3 weeks ago, when Robert David Steele, a retired CIA field commander who's worked with the U.S. Army closely, was recommended by Colonel Schaefer to come on this show. And he predicted that they would launch an Ebola false flag terror attack in the United States, and that it would actually be a simulant that made people sick, but that it wouldn't actually even be Ebola. but that they needed to get infected people into the country as a cover for what they were really going to do. I agree with you, it's starting to turn around, but won't the entrenched bureaucracies and special interests and foreign interests, won't they pull off a huge false flag? Or have we exposed false flags so well now that it's into the vernacular that they are hesitant to use it?
No, they will have another false flag. In fact, the false flag I'm hearing about is a simulated Ebola attack in which they actually use biochemical weapons that dissipate, but then they pretend that it's Ebola and that it has been brought here by Saudi martyrs. Okay, so no, we have not reached the end of the false flag line. However, what we have reached is I did my first graduate thesis on predicting revolution, and there's a difference between preconditions of revolution and precipitants. And I have posted a graphic on preconditions of revolution that exist in the USA today. Now, a precipitant is like the Tunisian fruit seller. My preferred precipitant is a soccer mom that tortures herself on the steps of Capitol Hill, and it appears on YouTube. But the bottom line is the next false flag could lead to a general strike across this country.
People really are not buying it. I mean, they just get caught. I talked to the military, and I'm not exaggerating. It was 50% of the military, enlisted or officers I talked to 10 years ago that were somewhat awake. 2 years ago, it was like 75%. It's like 90% now.
I agree with
false.
That. 100%.
That's why.
Military, in fact, the military veterans, 22 of whom are committing suicide every single day, military veterans plus unemployed college kids plus unemployed old guys like me. In my demographic, the unemployment rate is closer to 40%. The real unemployment in the United States, according to shadowstats.com, is 22%.
Yep.
Okay. And if we all come together and you throw into that the soccer moms, I think you have the beginning of a revolution in the United States of America. And that's why I ran for president, to get an Electoral Reform Act that would put the public back in charge.
If you talk about, people like Colonel Schaefer has so much courage, they tried to throw him in jail for speaking out, made up stuff. They tried to, William Binney, and number 4 at the NSA, the director of one of their major programs, they've been trying to put him in prison. And they're now calling me up saying, listen, we're going to set you up and put you in prison. I haven't got to this yet on air, but I mean, it's been multiple people just point blank saying, we're going to come after you if you don't shut your mouth. And I don't think they understand. It's going to get to the point where I'm going to come after them, and I don't mean in a violent way. I mean, these roads go 2 ways here. You know what I mean?
I do. Unfortunately, I think they have the power to do more damage to you than we have to do to them. But if you were to disappear, I would be very pleased if your audience rose up and demanded habeas corpus. Because if Alex Jones goes off the air, people will notice. If I disappear, nobody will notice.
Now, the reason that interview was so important, again, this is the 6th day of October 2014 on this live Monday edition. The reason that's important is that Colonel Schaefer, who blew the whistle on Stratus Ivy and a bunch of other secret operations conducted in and around Afghanistan right before 9/11, Able Danger, you name it. He was over the program to kill al-Qaeda leaders, and they were continually ordered by the CIA and by the White House not to drop Hellfire missiles on Osama bin Laden and the rest of his leadership when they had him confirmed in their sights. And Sibel Edmonds, high-level FBI, NSA translator, high-level communiques, was picking up and confirming the chatter that he testified secretly to Congress on. Now, since then, a lot of what he said has come out and been confirmed. But he said, I can't talk about a lot of this on air, Alex. He said this on air, but he also said it off air to me. He said, get Robert David Steele on. He'll tell you what's really going on. Because he'd worked with him in Army operations with the CIA, the actual arm of the CIA that's actually on the ground, actually fighting, not the 98% that just sits around in offices all day showing off their CIA coffee cups to each other. So we got him on, and he dropped bombshell after bombshell after bombshell after bombshell after bombshell. And I just don't think people realized what they were hearing when he was on the show. Was a data dump, we'll talk to him about this tomorrow, of what's really being talked about inside the Pentagon. Now, I've tried to explain to everybody something here. There's different factions in the Army, different factions in the Navy, different factions in the Marines, different factions in the Air Force, different factions in the CIA, different factions in the FBI. Everybody knows that. And the classic factions are black hats, white hats. And for the majority of this country's history, there were more white hats than black hats. A lot of boss hog corruption, but there was no attempt to overthrow the country, undermine it, destroy the family, bankrupt the country. Just no one would go along with that. We now have running these agencies groups of people that are globalist who want to sacrifice American prosperity and freedom on the altar of globalism. And so you now have the British military coming out last week and telling their government, stop funding al-Qaeda. This is in the London Telegraph yesterday. I mean, the headline, I read it on the Sunday show, was British military commanders, brass, I'm paraphrasing, they'll pull the headline up, put it on screen for TV viewers, for radio listeners, I'll read it out to you. Top British brass, or top UK brass, tell government to stop funding through Gulf states terrorist groups. And then we also see the Pentagon coming out and saying that 2 weeks ago with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dempsey. There's the headline. Army chiefs tell government stop Gulf states funding terrorism. Joe Biden comes out last week and says that Qatar and others are clearly funding terrorists. I mean, they're buying them the trucks, the armored vehicles, the weapons. They're buying it from the U.S. and NATO. They're giving it to them. But the U.S. and NATO is also delivering it directly to them. I've been harping on this forever. Because the public may not fully know what's going on, but inside government, it's what I call a come to Jesus moment. Where, oh my gosh, our government is run by criminals that really are funding a worldwide jihad of global destabilization. Oh my gosh, big mega banks really are shipping in the drugs, running the aircraft, and laundering the money. Oh my gosh, the NSA really is spying on everybody political to blackmail them and control them. It's not about keeping us safe. Oh my gosh, it's all true. Oh my gosh, we're going into a tyranny. Oh my gosh, it's the worst the world's ever seen. Do we really want to do this? And now people in government are looking, because the facade has fallen, the curtain has been pulled back, the little man behind it. It's that Toto moment in Wizard of Oz. They're now going, well, who are these globalists? What is the New World Order? What's their end game? What's their goal? What's their ideology? And then you find out what their ideology is. Pure anti-human, anti-decency, overthrow of reality, total playing God, mental illness writ large. And now humanity is starting to line up on which side they've chosen. Now it's clicking. And the masses of good people around the world, not just here, in private industry, in private life, in government and corporations, you name it, are realizing everything is in danger. Prosperity, the future, you name it, to basically a 21st century French Revolution that will bring in super oppression, not remove the problems that are there. The system has been broken on design so that on its ashes, a hellish scientific dictatorship can be built. Perpetual war for perpetual peace. Perpetual martial law, the national stabilization force in every country. Secret police on every corner. Secret arrest, just hell on earth. A psychopath's dream. A man who wants prosperity and security and honor, a nightmare. And you notice good people always get down until things are overwhelmingly against them, and then that's when the good guys start standing up, historically. And the elite know that, so they've put a lot of things in place to try to stop that, but it's not going to work. We've not been hit flat-footed by all this. The liberty movement, as Ron Paul said in that 2003 speech that's in my film, Matrix of Evil, he said they're going to collapse the world economy by design in the future and on its ashes bring in planetary dictatorship. Agenda 21, total managed economy by select groups to shut down all their competition. We've got to get in place now to show they're the authors of it so that people will go to liberty and to true capitalism versus crony capitalism when the collapse comes. That's our moment of opportunity to wake up as many people as we can beforehand so we're not caught flat-footed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've not been caught flat-footed. We've been working around the clock worldwide, the Liberty Movement, to warn people about what's coming, to expose the globalist program, to break down how they create crises or exacerbate current crises, to pose as saviors, and to expose their modus operandi paradigm. And once people have the blueprint, they'll know what they're looking at. And then they can go research it for themselves and find out we told the truth. And then it's not rocket science. You know the enemy. Once the enemy is identified, once they have been spotlighted, they are in deep trouble. And they've still got a lot of little tricks up their sleeve, but at that point, unless they basically decide to blow the planet up, they can't go anywhere in the next 6, 7, 8 moves in this global chess game. Once the paradigm has shifted that there is a global corporate group, anti-free market, sitting on top of the nations, playing us off against each other, divide and conquer, trying to create ignorance, trying to destroy prosperity because it competes with their monopoly of power and their hegemon. Once that genie is out of the bottle, once that cat is out of the bag, once that train leaves the station, it's over. And by the way, here's the little secret. The train already left the station. The genie already is out of the bottle. They're just now trying to keep you from realizing that, because the moment you realize that that's happened is the moment it's truly left the station. It's kind of a mile down the road right now, and they want to bomb it and blow it up before it gets too far. Not that that'll even save them, but that's the best bet they've got, is bring in Ebola, start a war with Russia, blow up some federal buildings, blame the Liberty Movement. The problem is our people are inside all the police departments. They're inside the FBI, the CIA. They're everywhere. We are the majority minority in government, the Liberty Movement, and the system knows that. Their purges haven't worked. What's going to happen when you blow up another Murrah building? I'm talking to the globalist. What's going to happen when you release smallpox or anthrax again? What's going to happen when you put a drugged up kid on an airplane with a firecracker in his pants? We're going to have 2 witnesses that are lawyers that are going to blow it wide open, and Congress is going to have to admit the CIA got him on the airplane. When you run your false flags, you better do it at the North Pole, because we're watching everything you do, and we know who's behind it, and we know who the killers are, and we know who the criminals are. You understand that? And we know your plan, we know your tricks, we know your games, Jack. So don't think you're not being watched. Don't think that your whole NSA system has got everybody scared and suppressed, because all the NSA system's becoming is a giant feedback loop to wake up everyone. You gave 800,000 plus people access to total intelligence. All you did was create a sieve to expose your operations. You thought you'd use it to suppress people blowing your operations. In your greed, you blew your own operation. Humanity is rising. The latest on Ebola, the economy, the Second Amendment, and more. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com. All right, I want to open the phones up coming up in the next segment to discuss 2 different big issues. A, how big of a deal is it that you've got Joe Biden, Obama, and others trying to cover their booties? You've got Senator Lindsey, Limp Wrist Graham, and the rest of them running around doing the same thing, going, isn't it right, General Dempsey, that none of our allies ever gave any weapons to ISIS? And Dempsey goes, well, of course they did. And now the British military has come out and told their government stop arming them. And our own military has been refusing for over 1.5 years to be part of it. There has been a mutiny following the Constitution, following their oath, that's gotten almost no coverage, where our military and where Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman went, remember, 1.5 years ago, to the White House at midnight and told Obama, don't launch those airstrikes tomorrow or there is going to be problems. When thousands of our military put out tweets, holding up signs, officers, saying, I did not sign up to fight for al-Qaeda in Syria against Assad. And so they rearmed them, let them take over the Middle East, and are now trying to spin it that, oh, our allies weren't even involved. We weren't involved. Because this could bring down the entire system, ladies and gentlemen. They have gone way too far. Now, if they get away with this, that's why Walter Jones, the congressman, is joining us. If they get away with this, the sky's the limit. And that's why the globalist technicians, the social engineers, only do things if it helps them on a whole bunch of fronts. They're obsessed with that. They can make hundreds of billions if there's a global pandemic of Ebola on a vaccine. Hundreds of billions of the next decade, conservatively. That's not even the big reason. They can bring in a medical tyranny of oppression and control. That's more important. But currently, it's good as a political smokescreen and helps push federalization once the crisis gets going. Kind of like FEMA ordered to stand down in Katrina, and then a year later got double their funding for disasters. Failure is rewarded, so you fail to get more money. No other country's ever done things that way. We've never done it either, but that's the new system the last 15 years or so in the United States. And it becomes a political distraction while Obama's got executive orders on open borders, executive orders on getting rid of our power plants, executive orders on military, executive orders on everything under the sun, carbon taxes, you name it. While all of this is happening, we're hearing Ebola, 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 and they set the precedent to say, oh, like the CDC head said Saturday, oh, if we don't let people come in and out, that could spread it. Keeping the aircraft flying back and forth, that stops it. That's like saying, you know, taking a hatchet to your fingers stops them from bleeding. Or shooting yourself in the head with .357 Magnum is good for you. I mean, it's just 2 + 2 = whatever I say. It's all part of overthrowing reality. As Governor Jindal said, he said, this is absolutely the diametric opposite of common sense. I'll give you his exact quote. Scroll down on that for me. The exact quote was, he said, this defies logic, not halting flights, as France and England and everybody else and the UAE and everybody else has done. But instead, they have a guy get up there from the CDC, the director, and say, no, this is no big deal. Well, then why didn't you ever let Ebola patients in before? Why would you halt flights from countries with pandemics before? It's all about setting the precedent. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want. More on Ebola straight ahead. I'll give out the number. We'll take your phone calls. We're also going to get into a bunch of other important news. 62 million people in U.S. now speak different language at home as English begins to die in the United States. Well, sure, you don't want these groups to speak the world language and be effective. You want them in tiny little minority groups controlled by the Democratic Party El Jefe. Oh, and get this. France is pro-business. PM tells London audience. And the Easter Bunny's real, too.
Introducing the first proprietary oxygen-based intestinal cleanser, OxyPowder. Backed by real FDA-approved phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials. People are suffering from all kinds of digestive issues these days. All the toxins from the air, the food, the water, ultimately ends up in the gut or affects the gut. My main focus was to come up with a remedy for this, something that's safe and effective that anyone can take on a regular basis to keep their intestinal lining clean. My recommendation is to clean your intestines at least 2 to 3 times a week to prevent the toxic buildup from going into your bloodstream. Take your health into your own hands and start cleansing your body today with OxyPowder. Secure your OxyPowder today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com.